Morning, my dear friends. Beautiful morning here in Southern California as I'm in Surfside getting ready for the MB. I can hear those white birds chirping away out there. I can see them picking at the bait. That means surf fishing is going to be outstanding here today. Anytime you see that, and I see a lot of birds hitting the water, that means good stuff for surf fishermen. There is so much to talk about: marlin, bluefin tuna, yellowfin tuna. We've got albacore. We've got so much to cover. So I'm going to be quiet and set up and get to the MB coming
On
up.
September 24th through the 26th, we'll be on board the Apollo, and you are invited for this very special 2-day trip. It is limited to only 21 anglers, includes all meals, and should be fantastic. This is when we have our best weather months in the fall, and the Apollo, they've been on their game this year. Outstanding fishing and really nice weather. Then we're going to switch over to the Amigo out of 22nd Street Landing in San Pedro, California for another 2-day adventure. October 6th through the 8th should be another great trip. Tanner, Cortez Bank, and anywhere else the fish are. Don't forget, text me at 657-227-6459 to get on board the Apollo and or the Amigo. Best weather months of the year, and hopefully lots of fish for you to catch.
Hey, good morning, my dear friends, and welcome to beautiful Surfside, California. This gorgeous Wednesday morning. It is truly beautiful. Air temperatures perfect. There's no wind at all, and the ocean looks flat calm, and the weather has returned. The good weather has returned. We have so much to talk about. There's marlin crawling all over Southern California, and some epic catches being made here right now. Long range situation couldn't get any better. It is wide open for the Independence and several other boats. Down in Baja, California, San Quintin, Ensenada, and several other zones are really biting up north. San Francisco with some great fishing. Albacore in Santa Cruz, and out there on Tanner and Cortez, the nighttime bite is back on again. A great night bite last night for the Pacific Dawn and several other boats. You know what time it is. It's time for the morning briefing. Good morning, my friend. Oh my God, do I need a nice hit of this? Absolutely. So great to be with you all. Thank you so much for all the likes you give us. Hit that like button right now. It means the world to us. Share these videos with a friend and subscribe to the Friedman Adventures YouTube channel. Also, tick that little bell. You'll be notified first when there is new content available. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on TikTok, on Instagram, and on Facebook. Always great to be here with you all. Man, there is so much to talk about. But first of all, right here on this beach, this Saturday, August the 31st, 7:30 a.m., we're going to have a surf fishing adventure for all of you. It's a no fishing license required day. Perfect time to bring down somebody who's never fished before, and they can enjoy this, catch a fish or two, and have fun with the Friedman Adventures family right here this Saturday, 7:30 a.m. until about 10, unless the fish are continuing to bite. We'll hang in here for as long as they want to chew. Also, don't forget, we have those two great charters coming up, and fishing is really starting to hit its stride. The fall is when we have our best weather months. That's why we have that 2-day trip on the Apollo. And then in October, that's late September, then in October on the Amigo out of 22nd Street Landing. Those are a couple of great trips. Unfiled taxes, give our friend Tim Marquez a call this very moment. Tim has been doing taxes for 35 years, and he will make your headaches go away. And John Lopez over there at Efficient Heating and Air Conditioning will make your heating and air conditioning needs a thing of the past. Sam De La Torre at Island Fishing Tackle called John. He fixed up everything. Sam was thrilled. Give John a call today. All right, great to be with you all. Let's start out and start talking a little bit about what's going on south of the border. Cedros Island not wide open ever since we went through that full moon, but not wide open means you're still catching double digits most of the time on the pongas out of there. Sam De La Torre and guys from Island Fishing Tackle are headed down there, and hopefully that bite's going to go back to the way it was. Esvin Hernandez was down there yesterday. They had 11 yellowtail on their ponga, but they were dealing with windy conditions and just really kind of miserable seas and everything else. So they decided to go over and see if they make a couple of halibut drifts, and they got into a flatty bite that was absolutely awesome. And Esvin got a 37-pound flatfish. That is one fine fish indeed. K&M Sport Fishing in San Quintin, 140 miles below the border. It's a great drive to go down there. Wide open yellow fishing on the surface iron for them recently. It has been fantastic on the yellows. There's been some yellowfin tuna outside every once in a while that you'll run into. And there's also plenty of rockfish, occasional nice halibut fishing. But the yellows is what's biting, and the surface iron fish have been great down there in San Quintin. Ensenada, we saw outstanding bluefin tuna action yesterday. You know, it dipped down on us for a little bit, and now it's back on again. And there certainly is no lack of fish, and it's close to home. All these positive factors making Ensenada a great place to be fishing out of right now. Blackfin Sport Fishing, the guys at Baja Sport Fishing, Mara Sport Fishing, and several other operators down there in Ensenada are putting the hurt on the bluefin tuna right now. Bluefin are located just outside of Todos Santos Island, about 10 miles or so. Soledad Bank, they're being caught on trolled Mad Max. You can get them on the dart jigs, you know, like the Daiwa Zacana, works really, really well. And we've also seen some fish on surface iron. Really excellent fishing right now inside the bay in Ensenada. We continue to see great yellowtail action in there. When you get on that right bird school, a lot of guys are offshore fishing the bluefin, but some guys opt to stay in there. And man, I'll tell you, those birds get on the bait that's getting forced up by the yellowtail. You run over there full speed, shut down on it, throw an iron, and man, there is nothing that gets your adrenaline flowing like that. That is absolutely an outstanding way to take those yellows, and a lot of fun. Some decent calico and sand bass fishing. Few barracuda, not as much as there were a month ago or so, and then plenty of rockfish to help fill the sacks. It's For Reals Sport Fishing, another great operator in Ensenada, and Louis Prieto will be headed out soon. You can give him a call, look him up on Facebook. It's the number 4 Reels Sport Fishing. They always do a great job. So some really good stuff going on there. Incidentally, when the show ends, the morning briefing ends, do not go anywhere. Marcus Fain will be joining us, and Marcus just caught his limits of bluefin tuna out on Tanner and Cortez Bank on board the El Dorado, and he goes into great detail about everything you'll need to know to catch your limit of bluefin tuna. He goes into it all. What pound fluorocarbon, how to hook your bait, the conditions they encountered. Is it a long soak to get a bite, or are you changing your bait every 30 seconds? All of it and more right at the end of today's report. You're not going to want to miss that. 9:30 a.m. today, live from the Channel Islands, Captain Daniel Hadaway from the Island Spirit. All right, let's talk long-range sport fishing, because it can't get much better than it is right now. On the Independence, Greg Nord is on board there, wide open on the yellowfin tuna, dealing with the Mexican sailors at the same time. They were trying to maneuver their way around, but they had no shortage of 50 to 80-pound yellowfin tuna. Absolutely phenomenal fishing going on board the Independence right now. I don't know how it can get any better than it is. And in addition to that, you know, there's some wahoo fishing going on for the 7 and 8 day boys out of San Diego. There's some great yellowtail action. And then on the way home, they'll go into the Baja coast and catch big, fat calico bass, big reds and lingcod, and also a good flash of yellowtail and white sea bass on some of those adventures into the Baja coast on the way home. It truly has been one of the best years. David Rouse, who fishes the Independence, he's on there right now on a regular basis. He's out several trips every year. That's an understatement. He's out all the time long range fishing. He calls it the best long range fishing summertime he's seen in 20 years. In 2 decades, that is saying a lot. Man, that is some really good fishing. We'll be on board the Independence in April of next year on a 5-day trip. Give that some serious thought. IndependenceSportfishing.com. Check it out right now and join us on that trip. We have an 8-day trip in November, been sold out for a year. So jump on that April trip while there is still time. Really great long range fishing going on for everybody who's been down there recently. It has been absolutely spectacular. All right, let's talk our bluefin tuna out there on Tanner and Cortez Bank. Cortez is where you're going to find some of that big yellowtail. There's also some yellows on Tanner, but it seems like Cortez has been the place to be. At night, you can drop her loop with live squid if you're fortunate enough to have it. That's been working really well. Heavy line. There's also bluefin tuna out there. It seems like Tanner Bank has been holding some of the bigger bluefin tuna. And the weather this morning is beautiful, and the boys are already catching some fish here this morning. I've talked to a couple of guys who said, we're seeing it, the weather's nice. They're biting a little bit here this morning. That is great news here on this Wednesday morning. Last night, the Pacific Dawn had some furious action on big grade bluefin tuna at night, biting the jigs, 350 to 500 grams, but mostly 350 now as the weather and wind and current are all starting to cooperate, and the light switches up on this bluefin tuna. It is biting again. Polaris Supreme, Tim Meyer was on that boat. He was the charter master. Raves about the Polaris Supreme and her crew. Great fishing for them with limits of bluefin tuna. The Highliner, another huge trip on board the Highliners. They limited out on the bluefin tuna. Absolutely spectacular fishing. And Tanner and Cortez Bank, for those of you who are not familiar with the geography, from landings out of San Diego all the way up to the Channel Islands, it's about a 100-mile run, 90-mile run for most of the boats to get out there into that neck of the woods. So you're talking a 9-10 hour journey to get you on the bank and get you catching. I highly recommend at least a day and a half trip. Some guys can pull it off on overnight, but you just don't have a big window. At least a day and a half trip, and that will really maximize your fishing opportunities on this fish. So remember, Marcus Fain at the end of today's report is going to have all the tackle tips and more. If you're going fishing for bluefin tuna, you must hang on and listen to this. He is an extraordinary guest, I will tell you that right now. Over on the horizon, I just talked to my friend, Captain Ricky, and Ricky said, Phil, I think this is the smallest bluefin tuna we've ever caught, a 3-pounder. It was injured and bleeding a lot. That's the only reason they kept it. But he surmises from that these fish are birthing here in Southern California, that these fish are actually spawning and having their young here in Southern California. That's why this fishery has been so great. I'm going to ask some experts about that a little bit later on. 3-pound bluefin tuna, as you can see. Have you ever caught one smaller than that? Have you ever seen one smaller than that? Drop a comment down below, because Ricky Perez, who's out all the time, says that's the smallest bluefin tuna he has ever seen. So some really great fishing going on right now south of the border, long range, and out there on Tanner Cortez this morning. They're biting already. The weather's looking good. I don't know how it can get much better than it is. Let's talk about this Southern California Marlin for one moment, because guys are seeing it everywhere. Sometimes you'll just see a fish randomly jumping out of the water. Oceanside whale watching film this Marlin doing just that. And man, there has been some extraordinary catches. Private boaters have had several fish on board the Native Sun yesterday out of 22nd Street Landing in San Pedro, California. They had a Marlin on board there. I mean, it has been incredible. The Patriot made Channel 5 News with their catch of a 172-pound striped marlin. Mike Jensen, the captain, said he's been seeing marlin all over the place, crawling all over Southern California. So he put some jigs in the water and they hooked that fish, and that has been occurring with great frequency. Carter Boris fought that fish for 40 minutes on board the Patriot until they subdued it and got it on board. So There's a lot of marlin running around here. I know the guys on the Gale Force love to troll for marlin. Even before this really got crazy, they were doing that and having great success with it. And if they end up keeping the marlin, what they do is they fillet it up, and then everybody goes home on the Gale Force with a chunk of Marlin. So a lot of marlin around right now. I don't know how it can get any crazier than it is right now. Don't forget, promarahi.com, 10% off when you put in FA at checkout. Lobster season's right around the corner right now. So make sure when you're buying your hoop nets and everything else, you put in FA at checkout. And of course, they've got jigs and nets and gaffs and so much more, and you can save 10% when you do that. Keep that in mind. Don't forget also 10% off at Big Fish Bait and Tackle this Saturday all day long. When you mention Friedman Adventures, you come down to our event, stop there, get your bait, and they will take really good care of you. Let's talk islands, and we got to go to the Coronado Islands. This has been the best year I've seen in decades, most consistent, or perhaps the best area to fish so far this year has been the Coronado Islands, at least on a somewhat local kind of bite. It has been extraordinary. When we get to the weekdays, that's when this bite really excels because you have the boat pressure off and the fish are nibbling. 25-pound fluorocarbon, a fly line bait has been the way to go, but there's been surface iron fishing, yo-yo iron fish. The islands have been great. If you hang out at the islands, you can catch some barracuda and calico bass and so much more. And there's some bluefin tuna right in the mix there also. Just a little bit offshore. You're finding some BFT in that bite. It has been spectacular. Liberty with a bluefin tuna, 85 on the yellowtail. Mission Bell, 76 yellowtail, 1 bluefin tuna. The San Diego, 55 yellowtail. The Sea Watch, 51 yellowtail, all out of San Diego, fishing the Coronado Islands, which are in Mexican waters. You do need a passport to fish there, but absolutely spectacular. Wonderful fishing going on there. San Clemente Island. Most of the guys, of course, are fishing the tuna. Guys that go in there can pick off a few white sea bass and yellowtail. There's some decent calico bass fishing also at times there. Man, is that beautiful or what? What a surf fishing morning this would be if I only had a rod and I wasn't blah, blah, blah about all the great fishing that's going on in SoCal, and it truly is remarkable. At Catalina Island, can we see it? Heck no, it's a little bit too whatever it is, foggy or whatever that is offshore. But Catalina, trust me, is right out there, 20 or so miles. And at Cat, superior bonita fishing going on right now. You can still pick off the calico bass on many of the trips fishing. 15-pound and a good hot bait. That works good. GL4 is a new fluorocarbon. You get more line for a less expensive price, and you put in FA at checkout at Promar, and then you save another 10%. GL4 fluorocarbon working great. 15-pound on the calico bass will get you more fish than you ever imagined. A few yellows still puddling around over there, but the catching has been not all that great on the yellowtail, but a lot of bonita. The pursuit over there with a lot of bonita. The El Patron has been there on a regular basis out of Long Beach Sport Fishing, www.longbeachsportfishing.org. Get on the El Patron limited load, great boat, speedy, get you to Catalina, and some superior action going on. Mostly bonito right now, but good stuff. Up in the Channel Islands, we are seeing mostly rockfish, sculpin, whitefish, but you talk about going home with some of the most delicious eating fish you could ever imagine. You're looking at the Island Spirit's most recent trip. They had a great one out there with Captain Daniel Hadaway out of Ventura Sport Fishing. They're a half-day boat. They leave at 8, come back at 4. That's way more hours than you normally get on a half-day boat, but really great fishing. The guys filleting up some great eating fish after catching whitefish and lingcod and reds and boccaccio and so much more. Really spectacular fishing up there on the Island Spirit out of Ventura Harbor. Sport fishing, I don't know how I can get any better than that. Really, really good stuff. There's a little bit of yellowtail around. The gray light had a few yellows, some calico bass, and also a little sand bass up and down the coast there. Mostly rockfish, however. Occasional white sea bass, occasional halibut or two. But that halibut and white sea bass fishing was at its apex several weeks ago, and it has really mellowed out right now. A lot of rockfish. Santa Barbara, similar kind of situation. Santa Cruz, they're catching albacore up there. We've had some great information from the boys up there as they've been catching albie up there out of Santa Cruz. First time in a decade the fish have been that far down the California coast. That is great news. And San Francisco, what a great bite up there on lings, on reds, great rock fishing, still catching some halibut up there in that neck of the woods. It has been spectacular out of San Francisco. I jumped over Morro Bay and Avila Beach up in that neck of the woods. Great rock fishing going on, no question about it. At the end of today's report, an exclusive interview. Marcus Fain going to cover the bluefin tuna bite. Let's go down to San Diego and talk about the local bites still catching sand and calico bass. Good morning, Jeff. Really, really good fishing down there in San Diego. We continue to see great sand bass and calico bass. There's some rockfish mixed in with it. And then there's the occasional yellowtail and white sea bass. That is still happening down there. The local fishing in San Diego this year has been really excellent. Really, really good fishing going on down there. Up there around Oceanside, a little bit more bass going on up there. A lot of shorts, but good action. Same thing out of Dana Wharf. They're catching some bass, a lot of shorts, but releasing quite a few. So you get that action. And those are just really schools of learning, choosing a good hot bait, releasing your fish safely, making the perfect cast. All of that takes place on a local trip. It's such a great way to learn about the great sport of sport fishing up here in the Long Beach, San Pedro's areas. We're catching a little bit of bass during the weekdays. Weekends, it seems like we get too much boat pressure, but the Victory had calico and sand bass yesterday. I think 10 sand bass and 60 calico bass, filling in with sculpin, whitefish, rockfish up here. Up there on the Tortuga, man, they had a really excellent day out of Marina del Rey sport fishing. On the Tortuga, they had halibut, bass, really fun day out of there. Mostly, however, on the bigger sport boats up there, you're going to be catching sculpin, whitefish, rockfish, that kind of a thing. Same thing, Redondo. And we've covered the Channel Islands with you all. Don't forget, if you want to get on the island spirit, you can do it by giving Saul a call at 805 676 3474 or go to VenturaSportFishing.com. Captain Daniel Hottaway right here. Friedman Adventures live at 9:30 with all the latest in the Channel Islands. Make sure you tune up that report. There has been some spectacular surf fishing down around Huntington Beach. We're seeing tons of corvina, catching a few, but the yellowfin croaker bite down there has been fantastic. It's good right here, right now, also in Surfside, California. Saturday's going to be a great day, August the 31st, right here, 7:30 a.m. I'll see you here on the beach. We're going to catch a lot of fish and have a lot of fun. Bring a cup of coffee and a chair and kick back and enjoy the show. If you don't want to fish, that's okay with us also. You can just kick back and enjoy. Really, really nice surf fishing going on. Big Fish Bait and Tackle down there on the corner of Seal Beach Boulevard is a great place as Lupe makes her appearance on the morning briefing. A lot of dear friends walking by here today. Once again, down there at Big Fish Bait and Tackle, they are going to knock off 10% of your purchase this Saturday to celebrate the Friedman Adventures Surf Fishing Adventure Day when you don't need a fishing license. You don't need one. So you can come down here and give it a try. Once again, they have everything you'll need in terms of your bait. Stop off there about 7 in the morning this Saturday and get your 10% discount. Buy worms or whatever it is you're going to bring here to fish with. We'll have a sand crab catcher and see if we can dredge up some sand crabs for you all right here. And once again, a 2-hook rig works really, really well, although a Carolina rig is also very effective. And there's also been some nice spot fin croaker taken in the Southern California coast, Corvina up there in the Santa Monica Bay as well. So some great stuff going on surf fishing wise. We'll keep our eyes on that and so much more. Don't go anywhere. Marcus Fain coming up next. You're not going to want to miss it. He goes into everything you need to know about how to catch these bluefin tuna. 9:30 a.m. Right back here again, live presentation of Friedman Adventures. Don't forget, these bluefin are tough. You don't want to fish inferior hooks. Trocar is a great way for you to get the job done and realize your sport fishing dreams without some kind of a malfunction. I'm telling you, Troke are sharp and sturdy. They will put up with any battle any one of these bluefin tuna can throw your way. Have a great day. Always good spending time with you. And I hope to see you really, really soon. Stay tuned. Marcus Fang coming up next. Friedman Adventures. We are live right now with somebody I love. He is so knowledgeable and such a great guy, Marcus Fane. Marcus, how the heck are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Phil. How are you doing?
I'm doing great because you're on the show, and that means a lot to me. And you have just returned from a trip on board the El Dorado. The El Dorado operates out of Long Beach, California. I'm assuming you went out to Tanner and Cortez, but I'm not going to assume. I'm just going to ask you, get it straight from the horse's mouth. Let's first of all talk about where you fished, how the weather was, those kind of things, and then we'll get into the specifics of how people can catch more bluefin tuna.
Yeah. So you were right. You assumed right. We did. It was a day and a half trip on aboard the El Dorado, and we did fish Cortez and Tanner Bank. So when we first arrived, going out was really nice, but as we got closer to Cortez, weather was a little sloppy. Got really sloppy, pretty much during gray light. But as like the sun started coming up, it's got nicer and nicer. Swell started kind of flattening out, less wind, so it was actually enjoyable to fish. Far as the fishing goes, it was tough. There were plenty of fish around, but it was very tough on all three species: bluefin tuna, yellowtail, and big bonita. The key was either getting a really hot bait, butt hooking, getting it to go straight down. I mean, it's pretty much almost to the bottom before you got big. 'Cause we were on an anchor. We're fishing probably about 120 feet of water. Um, or just honestly long soaking a hot bait as long as you could. There was times where majority of the times there were times we people wouldn't get bit until they had 3/4 of their spool dumped out
Wow.
flour. Yeah, that was the key. Instead of changing your bait, if you got a good bait, you just honestly had to just wait it out until you actually got a bite. It was never really fished bluefin like that, but that was pretty much what got you bit yesterday.
All right, excellent. That is such good advice. Now, I know there's some novice anglers out there saying, "What? How do I pick a hot bait? How do I know what bait is good and what bait is bad?" Maybe you could give just some basics about that for guys
Yeah.
that are new to this.
Yeah, so a hot bait pretty much is a bait that's really hard for you to grab in the hand wheel. A bait that's swimming faster than any of the other baits that you see in the hand wheel. So if you're looking at the bait and you see 7 to 8 baits, you're looking for that one that's just zipping around in that hand wheel. And the way that you want to, approach the bait tank or into the hand wheels is instead of trying to like, reach and grab it really fast, you want to get your hand up under the bait. You kind of want to just slowly, gently, you know, get your hand into a position like this and get them into a corner of the hand wheel and scoop them up and give them just a light grip. I mean, like very light, because you don't want the scales and the slime to come off that, affect how the bait swims, as well as the bait won't stay alive as long when you do that. So uh, that's what a hot bait is. It's a bait that's swimming really fast inside the hand wheel.
So, what would you tell people? Would you tell them to change your bait, or would you tell them to long soak? It sounds like the long soak thing really worked
Yeah,
well.
so the long soak was more important than honestly changing your bait, but you still it was kind of hard to describe. You needed a clean hot bait that wasn't all red scaled and beat up, but then you also uh, needed uh, to long soak that bait. When I mean long soak, I mean like keep it out probably 5 minutes or more before you got bit. Usually, when you're fly lining, when you're changing your bait, you're not bit within a minute or so, minute and a half. That's when you change your baits. But for some reason, the fish just did not want to be around the boat. Uh, they wanted to stay as far back as they could, and they were so far out you couldn't even cast a coat sniper on them. Even casting like
Wow.
a jig or a coat sniper, you wouldn't be able to reach them. So, it was just a waiting game. I mean, there was fish all around the boat. We would see them boil here and there, way away from the boat. But you honestly just had to sit and wait with a good bait. Keep tension on the line so you could feel your bait. And that was the main issue. That was the main issue with that. It was people were causing a lot of tangles, especially fishing braid, mainly because they couldn't feel where their line was at some point. You know, what happens is when you let out so much line, your line gets caught in the current, especially with braid. And if you don't keep it tight, if you're not constantly backpedaling that spool, making sure you feel the tail beats of that bait, uh, that that bait could be way around on the other side of the boat and you don't know it. So you just have to make sure you're in contact.
Excellent, excellent, excellent advice. So, Spectra, what are you fishing? 65 pounds, something like that?
So no, me personally, I've learned I like to fish anywhere from 40 when I'm fishing like 20. My main line is, I'm sorry, my top shot's going to be 20 pound up to 40 pound test. I like to fish 40 pound or 50 pound uh, braid, just because I notice with that thinner diameter braid, it helps that bait swim a lot better because it's lighter and it's cutting through the water better. So that's why I like to use lighter braid when it comes to fly lining. Obviously, if I'm fishing like jigs or heavier gear, then I'm going to use heavier braid, anywhere from 80 to 100 pound test, something like that. But when I'm fly lining baits, I typically like to use 40 up to 50 pound braid. And what I like to do is, for the most part, I use, when I fly lining bait, unless I'm fishing tight into the kelp or something like that, I like to actually put 50 to 100 yards of monofilament on top of my braid. I use the braid as backing, honestly, because the way I like to fish, everyone's fish is different, but this is just the way I fish. When it comes to fly lining, I feel that uh, with that with the monofilament to fluorocarbon connection, there's a little bit more weight in that mono. So what happens is, sometimes, is if you have a really good free reel with a good free spool on it, when your bait's swimming, it actually causes that bait to slowly, go lower into the water column instead of staying up on the surface. And I like a bait to to swim out away from the boat and down, because fish are always down looking up. So for the most part. So
Uh,
that's why I like to use the mono, and also monofilament with either a glass rod or a composite rod, something that has a little bit give to the tip. You're able to actually get a better hook set when you wind down into the fish or when you swing into the fish, just because that mono stretches. So when that fish is shaking its head, making crazy runs, there's the shock absorption distributes through the line evenly, and you don't feel as much of the head shake, and also that prevents the hook from pulling. So that's why I like to use mono, just so you have more stretch and you can pull a little harder with mono.
Man, such insightful, great tackle tips. We are loving it. Dan Lightfoot says hello. He wants to know, and I know you've answered some of these questions earlier on, but if you don't mind repeating, and there was another gentleman on here. Let's go to him first. JJ Fan.
Yeah,
He wants to know where you were fishing. You were Tanner Cortez area, right?
yeah. So we fished. So the first part of the day, pretty much in the morning, we fished Tanner. I'm sorry, Cortez Bank. There we picked off. We got one bluefin there that weighed about 70 pounds. It was a mixed grade, mainly that smaller bluefin that, let's call it 15 to 20 pound bluefin, with a few pushing like 30, 40. Majority of it, like I said, was 15 to 20. And then later in the afternoon, like around 2 o'clock, we bombed over to uh, Tanner Bank, and that's when we started catching more uh, 40 to 60 pounders, all on the same technique, with a long soak and a fly line bait. So a little bit, but then we were getting more bonita and yellowtail at Cortez Bank. So there was a little bit more variety to catch at Cortez Bank. When we got to Tanner, there was one yellowtail caught, and the rest were just bluefin. So a little bit less variety at Tanner, more variety at Cortez.
And are you guys making squid on the banks, or are you trying to make squid at Kilmeny, or
So
did you have squid?
yeah, we actually had a little bit of squid to fish in a dark on for dropper loops.
Right.
One lucky angler was able to get a nice halibut on the dropper loop while we were at Cortez Banks. And that was another cool thing because we had that squid, that live squid and fresh fed. There was only one game fish caught on it, which was the halibut. But people who didn't want to fish the surface or they weren't getting bit, um, catching any game fish. There were plenty of opportunities at the Cortez and at the Tanner to catch all the quality whitefish, sheephead, rockfish, even big scoping that you wanted. So that's what I love about the Tanner and Cortez Bank. If you aren't having luck or if you're kind of tired of fishing the surface, you can always drop down with a dropper loop or some little vertical jig and catch all the bottom fish you want.
All right, good stuff. JJ Finn says, thanks for the update. Dan Lightfoot wants to know how you were hooking your bait.
All right, so I typically like, especially on these kind of conditions, I butt hooked all my baits. I pretty much so butt hook is what they also call as belly hook, but pretty much if you hold your bait and you're looking the bottom of the bait, the anal fin, that bottom fin towards the back, you want to hook your bait right above that, through and through. That's where you want to hook your bait when it comes to butt hook. But other people were getting bit on nose hook, but like I said, they were long soaking their baits. So even though they were nose hooking, if their bait swam, they just kept, letting that bait soak until they got a bite. So that was the key. Like I said, I usually there's times you do have to long soak, but I will admit um, this was almost frustrating on how long you had to be patient and wait. So and there were times I kid you not where 3/4 of your spool would be out in the water before you got bit. And typically you don't want to fish like that, but conditions change, fish change. They're not always. I'm a firm believer that, especially with these pelagics, there's no just set way of always catching them. These fish, their behaviors change based on conditions, whether it's pressure, whether it's water temperature, whether it's current. So you just have to adapt to the conditions that are presented to you. I'm a firm believer of you have to adapt. If you see something that's off, or if you see something that's working, even if it's out of the norm, it's best to make changes and adjust to that just so you can get that bite.
That is such great advice. Be observant, right, Marcus?
Yes, absolutely.
Good stuff. Brandon Vincent. Hey, Brandon, welcome to the show. He says, awesome stuff. I concur 100%. Michael Fledler says, nice tips, Michael. You're not kidding, man. Every time you go on a trip, you're going to be on here from now on. That's it, Marcus. I'm sorry.
I'm
I don't care
stuck.
what I don't care what's going on.
It's an
Cue
obligation
ball,
now.
Cue ball's happy to be here. It says hello. And JJ Finn again saying thanks for the tips. He's going on Saturday, so this is really going to help him.
Good luck, JJ. Hope you guys get them.
Joshua said, where are you all from? And we are all from Southern California,
Southern
Joshua.
California,
Where are
born
you
and
from,
raised.
man? We'd like to know. He likes going fishing in Alaska. Hey, back to the fish. What grade primarily are we dealing with on the low end and the high end? And what's the average?
So, to be honest, it seemed like there was bigger fish at the Tanner Bank opposed to the Cortez. I would say there was more volume of fish at the Cortez. At the Cortez, like I was mentioning, we're catching anywhere from 15-pound up to our standout fish there was 70 pounds. But I would say majority of those fish were 15 to 25 pounds at the most. Nothing really bigger than that. Um, and then the yellowtail on the other end, however, yellowtail were all big. All those yellowtail were pushing anywhere from 25 to 35 pounds. They were all big fish. And you would notice a difference the minute you hooked a bluefin over a yellowtail. Bluefin would, take a decent amount of line, do its tail beats, and you would be done with it. Yellowtail would dump your spool and try to swim down to where the structure was, and that's when you had to pull. With the bluefin, they're not structure oriented. You just kind of take your time with them. With the yellowtail, even though we were fishing 100 to 120, if you just completely let them, take line off your reel and never stop them, they would break you off. We lost a considerable amount of both yellowtail and bluefin, but yellowtail really got a lot of anglers yesterday.
All right, good stuff. Hook size and type. What are you fishing with? Do you have to fish a smaller hook? And address that with regard to the bluefin and the yellowtail, please.
Yeah. So for the bluefin or for any tuna in general, I always use a number at the biggest for fly lining. I use a number two. I typically like to use a number four circle hook, owner mutu. I can't stress this enough. Stay away from the mutu light. Stay away from the hybrid mutus because they're just not solid. And these fish, bluefin specifically, and even yellowtail, will test your tackle and your hook. So what typically happens with that lighter mutu circle hook and the hybrid Bluetooth circle hooks. It has a flex. What happens is that hook is like this, but after so long, with so much pressure, that hook will open up and then snap back in place once the pressure is released. So I see a lot of hooks bend out or people pull hooks fishing those hybrids and those lighter ones. So I just use a standard owner Mutu circle hook. I haven't had a problem, or even blacktail. When I fish blacktail circle hooks, I like to use that number four, number two, or number four size. That's what I like to go to. If you're fishing like a sinker rig with heavier line, then I would switch to a size 1 circle hook if you're going to do like a sinker rig or even a 2-aught. But typically, when you're fly lining a bait, that's usually anywhere from 20-pound up to 40-pound test. I'm not fishing anything bigger than a number two circle hook, Bluetooth circle hook. And for yellowtail, I like to fish a J hook, but when you have bluefin or tuna mixed in with the yellowtail, it's best to just have the circle hook just in case you do hook a bluefin. Bluefin have those, serrated teeth, so they tend to chew you off. And if you have that circle hook, you get a much better position of hooking that fish in the corner of its mouth where the line's not behind the teeth. So I just say if you're fishing at the Tanner and the Cortez and you're catching both species of tuna and yellowtail, Mutu circle hook.
Excellent stuff. All Pro Pest Control says, he may have been on the trip with you, and he goes, man, I regret not getting to know Marcus a little bit better. I could have used his help on the trip. He wants to know, what do you do with a group of anglers that don't move out of the stern? They hog up the stern
You know
hog,
what? I
man.
think, yeah, I believe he was on that trip. That was another thing. We did have a full boat, 30 anglers. The Eldorado was a pretty big boat, so 30
Yeah.
anglers honestly isn't too bad on that boat. But like I said, there were a lot of novice anglers on this trip. So the tangles were just absolutely horrendous. And I think a lot had to do with just people having to scope out their lines so far to get big. The only thing you can do, honestly, to prevent tangles is what I like to do is don't walk directly to the middle of the stern and cast over people. That's number one. You're guaranteed 100% to get in the tangle by going directly in the stern, casting over everyone. I like to usually cast up off the sides of the stern, either port side or starboard side, depending on which way the current's going or which way, everyone's going in rotation. If you're usually at the end casting, chances are your bait's going to be out away from everyone else's line. You're going to get it's a less likelihood that you'll get a tangle, and you increase your chances of getting bit because your bait is swimming out away from everyone else's bait and it's getting singled out. So predator fish kind of like to do that when they see a one fish kind of swimming out of nowhere and it's that one bait. They tend to target that bait because it's an easy target. Uh, so yeah, that's all you can do, and also just let people know you need to get by, over and under, up and over, uh, simple as that, and also making sure that you can feel your bait. Keeping tension, backpedaling the spool, always knowing where your bait is. So even though you may seem like your bait's running really good, a lot of times that's just the current taking your line, and your line could be on the other side of the boat and you don't even know it if you're not backpedaling the spool and keeping tension on that line.
Great stuff, Marcus. Are,
Yeah,
are you guys getting a show on the fish? Do you see fish up, jumping out of the water, boiling, doing that kind of stuff, or no
yeah.
show at all?
So it wasn't like the whole time we were seeing it, but we definitely were seeing boils. So there were plenty of fish around the boat. It was just it was one of those days where you just really had to put in the time and the effort to get a bite. There's going to be some days you fish, whether it's bluefin, yellowfin, yellowtail, dorado, where it does you can't do anything wrong. You throw a bait out and you get bit, And there's going to be a lot of other days where you really have to just be patient, stay confident, and just spend as much time at the rail as possible. Maximizing, choosing really good baits, making good casts, and just paying attention to what's going on definitely increases your chances of getting bit.
Yeah, for sure. Cue Ball says West Coast is the best coast, and he says
Always.
the Cortez Bank produces an especially mean grade of yellowtail. The conditions there make them strong forkies, next level mean. I think he's absolutely right.
He's absolutely right. Like I said, we only landed for the boat 3 yellowtail, and I'm pretty sure we hooked over 10 or 15. People were just getting ruined. I wasn't fortunate enough to hook a yellowtail on this trip. All the fish I hooked were bluefin. But yeah, from my experience with Cortez and Tanner, especially Cortez, those are a different breed of yellowtail. They are very mean and they're usually big. I've never seen a yellowtail under 18 pounds at Cortez. So they're usually big fish, and those big home guard yellowtail, they live at that bank, so they know exactly where to go when they're in trouble or when you hook them. So very challenging fish to land.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, the name of the gentleman who was out there on the trip with you is Joseph Wilson. Joseph, welcome to the show. And next
Hey,
time
Joseph.
you need it,
Yeah. I
yeah.
met Joseph on the trip. Nice guy.
All right, perfect. That is good stuff. You guys, I don't know what your departure time is on these trips. Do you get any nighttime jigging in, or are you getting to the bank at daybreak?
No, so we left at 8:30. Berth 55. It takes quite a bit of time to actually exit the harbor because it's tucked in so far back into the harbor. So you're not ideally by the time you get bait, load everyone up, you're not out of the harbor until about 9:30, 10 o'clock. So we didn't get to Cortez Bank until about 5:30. So we
Yeah,
got a little bit of time to fish the gray light, maybe about an hour, and then after that the sun came up. So we didn't really get to do any knife jigging. Um, Also, pretty much by the time it was time to go home, or by the time it got really dark, 9 p.m., it was time to go home just because Cortez is so far and Tanner Bank are so far offshore. Uh, so yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get any chance to do any nighttime fishing. It would have been nice to get a few hours in, but um, yeah, trip pretty much wrapped up around 9 p.m. So didn't really get to do any nighttime or you know uh, any jig fishing at night.
gotcha. Najira Bro 619. This is a question that Najira, he's already answered this, but could you give the short version? He wants to know, what you're fishing, braid, fluoro to mono. What are you doing exactly?
So me personally, I like to have a backing of a braid, 40 to 50 pound braid. So I'll put probably maybe 200 yards of that on, and then I'll put an additional 50 to 100 yards of monofilament on. Just so I like to have that stretch, and then also a 3 to 4 foot, at the most 5 foot leader of fluorocarbon attached to that when I'm fishing live bait for big game. But it's personal preference. If you want to fish the braid to the short top shot of fluorocarbon, by all means. It's just personal preference. That's just how I brought what I mentioned about the mono. That's just how I fish.
Great question, Najira. And if you go back to the archive version once we're off the air, Marcus went into even further detail on that. Cue Ball says you can't ever stop turning the handle on the Cortez. One slip up, and you are
Agree.
yes.
Yep.
It's true,
Yep.
right, man? Those
It's
like
true. It's
like
true.
exactly what you said. Those forkies are headed for the structure, aren't they?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I dealt with that at the Coronado Islands. So I mean, And as mean as those fish at the Coronados were, I wouldn't say they're as mean as the Cortez Banks fish. So I truly understand about, constantly turning that handle. If you give those fish too much line, you're not going to land. Simple as that.
Marcus, any other tip that I've failed to ask you about that you think is really important to the anglers going, or have we covered it? Anything else?
Uh, I think I think for the most part we covered everything. We covered technique in terms of like uh the hook sizes and the hooks that you want to use, the pound test that you want to use. We also talked about bait selection, how to handle the bait, as well as uh, choosing a good bait and also how to hook the bait. So, 3 ways, I'll just go over it again. 3 ways I like to hook baits. Number one is butt hook. Unless it's wide open, then I'll nose hook. There's also a nose hook method, and then there's the shoulder hook where you pretty much right on the almost the collar or the shoulder of the bait is where you hook it. That's another good way to hook your bait, but usually bud hook for me is it's the best way. I get bit, pretty good on the bud hook.
Dan Lightfoot has read my mind. I forgot to ask you this question. I had it in my pea brain, but it is a pea brain, so sometimes it escapes me. Any yo-yo ironfish? Those Cortez Bank yellows will bite that quite often.
Yes. So, like I said, because the fish weren't really staying with the boat, they were so far away from the boat. I don't think yo-yo iron on this particular trip would have done very well, just because the fish were so far away from the boat. But typically at the Cortez and at the Tanner, if you anchor and the fish are swimming underneath the boat and around the boat, and in yellowtail, yo-yo iron is usually the best bet to go, in my opinion and from my experience, because you're fishing, for one, the fish are up and down. So you're fishing a heavier jig that's going straight down to the bottom, and you're winding as fast as you can once you hit the bottom. I recommend fishing at the lightest 50 pound, but when I'm at the Cortez and I'm yo-yo fishing, I'm fishing 80, sometimes 100 pound tests, just because
Yeah, yeah.
the, these fish will, I promise you, even on 40 pound, they will get the best of you. These are mean fish at the Cortez. And because you're hooking them vertically up and down, that means they're going to be closer to the structure anyways when you hook them. So you need to get every bit of line and leverage you can against that fish. And you got to think about it. If you're fishing, it doesn't matter if you're fishing 30 all the way up to 100 pound, you're winding that jig in so fast when you're fishing a yo-yo, they're not going to see the line. All they see is the jigs, moving really fast, vertically up and down, and that's all they're chasing. They're not looking at the line. So why run the risk of getting broken off on the structure when you can fish heavy line and stand a high chance of landing that fish?
All right, very good. Hit that like button, everybody. Marcus, care to make a comment on the El Dorado and her crew? Take it away.
So El Dorado is it's an excellent boat. She's 85 feet, very wide stern, very wide boat, very spacious boat. Captain TJ is a great captain. He works hard and looking for the fish. He's also very professional, very friendly. His crew is outstanding. Sean, Greg, which we call him Stumpy, and Michael. They're all great guys. They work really hard and they're you can ask them any questions. They're more than happy to help you out. Also, Brian in the galley is a phenomenal cook, really nice guy. So I definitely recommend the El Dorado. Been fishing that boat since I was a teenager, so that's it's always been a great boat to fish on.
Final question for you. We went through a period during that big full moon and all that wind where the bite really went down the tubes on us. Do you sense from what you're seeing that it's on the rebound?
Yes. So the amount of fish is still there. I think because we pretty much went through 2 weeks of just bad weather, slot conditions. These fish are, now that the weather's starting to kind of, get more fishable, these fish are finally starting to kind of get their groove back and biting again. The Freedom, the trip before ours, literally the day before us, the Freedom had limits of bluefin and they did really well on yellowtail. So that's a sign there that no shortage of fish, and that they're on the rebound. It's just maybe on that particular day that conditions were a little off, but we still captured a decent amount of fish. So wasn't a horrible trip, just a tough. I would say in terms of fishing, it was challenging if you were a novice angler. So definitely plenty of fish around. You just have to be there pretty much on the right day, to get that really good wide open bite.
Excellent stuff, Marcus. I can't thank you enough. The fastest half hour in sport fishing right here, man. That flew by. I can't believe
Yeah, it did.
we chatted for a half hour. Another great presentation. You have my thanks and all of our viewers, man. We have to make this a regular segment. You are awesome.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. And like I said, I'm more than happy to contribute.
Marcus, have a great evening and thank you so much for your expertise. It is deeply appreciated.
No problem, Phil. You have a good one.